So today we're going to cover recovery resources and funding, navigating insurance, understanding preparedness and resilience upgrades and green energy programs. These are all programs and resources that you could utilize to when you're reaching out to small businesses that you work with on a regular basis or on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. So we'll start off, and I think what's really great about this initiative that we're rolling out here is that Silvana and Rhode Island Commerce are taking all of these resources that we're going to talk about and put them in a centralized location on the internet for small businesses. So then we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. So first off, we'll talk about recovery resources and funding. If you were participated in our last workshop back on September 22nd, workshop 1, we talked a lot about preparedness. We did talk a little bit about funding and resources available, but today we're going to dive a little bit more deeper into detail on, move forward here, state assistance and resources. We're going to talk much more in depthly on small business disaster recovery and mitigation assistance. And then we're going to talk about the Ready for Resilience program in here. And again, we spoke about preparedness, and now we're going to move a little bit into response and recovery here in the state assistance and resources portion. So we're going to dive really deeply into REMA, Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, the recovery branch specifically, and their primary functions. Their primary functions are to obviously administer disaster recovery programs. I'm not sure if we have anyone here from REMA right now. I don't see anyone. Nope. So basically, they're in charge of the public, individual, and federal, public and individual disaster recovery programs, as well as they administer the Small Business Administration grants within the state, the programs within the state. So they do things like coordinating damage assessments, and we'll talk about that and how small businesses can help that effort. They provide technical assistance and training, and then they also participate heavily in engaging with stakeholders. They have a really great website that can help you communicate to small businesses on what they're supposed to do before a disaster happens, during, and through the recovery process. So the first off is data collection. And, from a small business perspective, what we would tell them here is that, the only way for a disaster to be declared is if there's enough data that will suggest a disaster is warranted, a disaster declaration is warranted. So what's really important to say when you're talking to a small business owner is to actually, right in the aftermath of an event, is to tell them, we need your information. We need Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency needs to know what types of damage are not just at your business, though that's a very important piece, but in your neighborhood, in your surrounding area. And as they piece this all together, it'll help decide whether or not a disaster declaration is warranted. So we've seen this before in the past. Local city and town governments have called on businesses and residents to fill out damage surveys. So again, I'd encourage small businesses that you talk to look out for those within their municipal announcements, and even probably at the state level too, I imagine. I can think back to a few years ago when Warwick had a flooding incident, and I think they provided a survey to the businesses and residents to help calculate and figure out just exactly what types of impacts the city had. So again, tips for small businesses after navigating recovery. Quickly act on damage reporting. Again, this is probably going to be either directly to REMA or to a local municipality, but keep on the lookout for those requests to assess damage in your area. That'll help assess damage in your area. We would suggest that they monitor declarations and announcements. The second an announcement or a declaration happens, they're able to then go out and get small business administrative assistance, small business administration assistance. So another thing we'd recommend is using the training and preparedness tools before a disaster strikes. The Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency has a bunch of different tools and resources available for disaster preparedness. Again, a lot of those resources are in the workshop 1 slides. So if you're interested in learning about preparedness, please go ahead and look at that. Engage with your local and state partners beforehand too. We talk a lot about working with your municipalities after. It's helpful to engage with your municipalities before because so they know who you are, so they know how your business operates. If you have a big facility, talk with your local fire department prior to a disaster. They're going to want to know how to respond to your facility. And from a marina perspective, we encourage our members at the Association of Marine Industries to go ahead and actually make a meeting. Bring the fire department to your facility and let them walk around, show them which doors go where, those types of things. After the fact, again, visit disaster recovery centers. There's resources there for you. There's support, there's assistance. They open up all around the state. They're supported by Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, and they're available to help you. Tied into the monitoring declarations and announcements, watch for those mitigation grant opportunities. And then finally, we recommend, again, a tip. We've said this probably a couple times now, and we're going to say it a couple more times. Make sure small business owners know to keep records meticulously. So that was a brief overview, I guess, of kind of the recovery, some small business actions that they can take for recovery. Roberta, thank you for putting into the chat the small business resiliency guides. We actually have a slide on this in this presentation. They're really great resources from Climate Change RI, and we'll talk a little bit about them. Small Business Administration Loan. We'll hop right into funding, resources for recovery. For the small business loan, the Small Business Administration is a federal organization, as you probably know, for those of you who are working in this field. They provide low interest loans, long-term loans too, that will help businesses and nonprofits recover after a declared disaster. And that's a big piece of this, is a disaster has to be declared. Some important things to remind small businesses is that these losses, so the loans do not cover losses that are already covered by insurance or other funding from FEMA. That's on both the personal side and the business side. They will cover business operating expenses that could have been met if the disaster, so business operating. So anything that you are liable to pay if a small business is liable to pay if they are not meeting that ability to pay it because of lost revenue or anything like that. So any commitments that they've committed to, rent, utilities, those types of things, insurance premiums. Types of disaster loans. There are 3 major loan types that are important to small businesses. First is a physical damage loan. Second is a mitigation assistance loan. And then the third is an economic injury. So that would be the last piece there, the business operating expenses piece. Let me see if I dive here. I do hop into mitigation assistance. The physical assistance is essentially covering costs, physical damage to your property or equipment or services that your insurance has not covered. Eligibility. if you're just chatting with a small business in your work, you would go and you could tell these are some important things they need to know. Um, First is it's up to 2 million in qualified businesses, up to $2 million in loans for qualified businesses and nonprofits. It covers again disaster losses not covered by insurance or other sources. Uh, Let me just make sure. And then proceeds from insurance covered on business property may be deducted from the eligible loan amount. So that's a kind of a way that the mechanism for funding there is that proceeds from insurance might actually be deducted from the total amount that's been allocated because of a damage assessment. Again, the proceeds can be used for repair replacement of property, machinery, equipment, fixtures, inventory, um, any fixing of like improvements to the property that are specifically that the business went through the process of improving, right? So they went through the process of paying for walls or seating or different types of equipment. All of those types of things would be covered under the in, businesses proceeds from this program. It's not able to be used for upgrading or expanding unless it's required by building codes. And then there's more resources on the SBA.gov funding programs webpage. It's a really what's it called? A really in-depth no, it has a lot of information on it available for small businesses. One area that's really kind of exciting. Why should I shouldn't say exciting about recovering from a natural disaster, but one thing that's really good about the program and exciting about the program is that the Small Business Administration is thinking about mitigation assistance. So you're able to go and get an increase on top of your loan of up to 20% to make building upgrades that would mitigate future disasters. So things like if you live in a flooding area, they might pay for better drainage or better waterproofing, walls, elevating property, those types of things that might help defer future costs to your business if the disaster were to happen again. So another cool function of this is there's no obligation to accept the increased amount. So a small business could go and apply for the loan program before, see how much it's going to cost them. And then if it's too much, if they don't think they can meet that premium or that monthly payment, they can say, we're not interested in this. And they can go ahead through with the loan to the basic loan to rebuild. So how would a small business apply for this? It's pretty straightforward. If a disaster happens in your area, you'll go onto the SBA website, and they have a tool that allows you to search for disaster declarations. They go through a process of eligibility. It's an eligibility tool. You type in where you are. Usually it's by county, and you can see whether you qualify based on the disaster declaration. Then you go ahead and apply for the loan. The loan has another layer of eligibility for it. And then if approved, you are given the grant, the loan. Throughout the entire process, that portal that I'm talking about allows you to check whether or not where you are in the process. So it's always able to check your status there. It'll have you create a login account. So another great program that we're going to cover today is the Ready for Resilience program, R4R program. It is supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, as well as some sponsoring partners. The cool aspect of this that is, a lot of small businesses don't know about this program. They actually had an impact report that I kind of allude to later on in a couple slides here. I keep forgetting that we're not talking to small businesses, so I can be a little more informal here and just kind of go for it. The impact report is says that there's not a single business in Rhode Island that has applied for one of these program grants. So this program is in addition to FEMA. It's a grant. It's a grant program. It operates similarly to the SBA program in that you are required to have a disaster declared in your area. But the key is here is that it's a grant, first off. So it's not money that needs to be paid back. The second fact is that this program has a quicker turnaround than most of the federal programs. They say they can get a grant out to a person that's applied for it in 27 days. So it's money that can get in the door a lot faster, and kind of be a supplemental while the business is waiting for the small business grant. Loans. There is an important aspect of this program too. The small business does need to go through a preparedness checklist. I have it. Do I have it in here? I might have it in the last. Here we go. Here's the preparedness checklist. It's all voluntary. There's no one checking that you've actually done this. Though I think the intent is to be good, honest and do the work. Make sure that you've filled out the continuity plan that they asked for. And once you've gone through this preparedness checklist, you'll hop back on the tool. They have an online portal that will check whether you're eligible. So that's what you would tell a small business. They have to do this prior to an event. So they have to become registered with the website, take the preparedness quiz, the checklist. They need to go and take the eligibility quiz, which I did online myself before this, just to get a good idea of what it's like. Basically, what it does is it asks you questions here about all of these different topics. Are you truly a small business? Have you completed their checklist, created an emergency action plan? Have they have a physical presence or online business located in the United States or territories? So there's just a lot of questions about eligibility. Once you go through that aspect, you essentially register with the website. And another cool thing about this program is that once a small business has registered for the R4R database, it's managed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Once they've applied, the business is in a registry, and actually the R4R program managers reach out to the businesses if a disaster is declared. So that process gets started on that end, rather than the business having to, while dealing with the on-the-ground stuff, also have to figure out how to manage the loan or the grant and all that stuff. It's already in process in the background by the R4R program. So a really cool program. It has been in existence since 2022, so it's relatively new. And you can learn a lot about their program in their Small Business Ready for Resilience Impact Report. Gives you an idea of what they've done. A couple facts. Since June of 2022, they have more than 3,600 small business owners have completed the preparedness checklist and registered for the program. They've given out 102 grants distributed during 32 different natural disasters. Their distribution time was 50 days in 2022, and in 2024 it was 27 days to get funding to to the small businesses that need it. So again, kind of a nice shot of relief really quick. So I'll stop here and see if we have any questions. Please feel free to raise your hand, and either I or Silvana can unmute you or request that you be unmuted, and then or you can ask questions in the chat there. Okay. So next up is overview of some tips small businesses. Sorry, tips for small businesses on navigating their insurance. This is not meant to be an incredibly detailed section on insurance. In fact, the main takeaway from this would be probably to contact your insurance agent or broker to ask questions about your policy. I think I say multiple times throughout this that the most important aspect of this is to make sure that your business insurance covers the property and the things that you want it to cover at the right amounts. That's probably the biggest take home. Their business insurance, comes in a different variety, comes in different packages. The first is liability insurance. It's protection against lawsuits and claims. Property insurance, it's the coverage of the physical property, any equipment, and inventory. Sometimes along with the property insurance are riders for specific items. So I mentioned, I think in workshop 1, that the coffee shop I worked at had a rider on our insurance specifically for a coffee machine, an espresso machine. So that's kind of something that a small business might want to know in advance, that they have a policy that covers that specific equipment, especially if it's extremely valuable. Additional coverage that they could opt for is business interruption insurance. Again, that covers income that's lost during an event. And then the other, which is required for most companies, is workers' compensation insurance as well. The only time you would not be required to have workers' compensation would be a sole proprietorship, I believe. And again, I'm not an expert on this. If you don't think you need to have, or if you think, again, the suggestion is contact your broker or agent here to discuss what needs you have for insurance. Flooding is a huge aspect of insurance. It's also a huge aspect of disasters. If you remember back again to workshop 1, we talked about how 68% of natural disasters in the United States have flooding involved with it. And then it is by far the most destructive value-wise type of natural disaster in the United States, which is a lot of the reason why your normal insurance coverage does not have that. It's not in your standard insurance policy, or it's likely not in your standard insurance policy. Businesses and residents in floodplains are required to have a FEMA flood insurance policy through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, if they have a federally backed mortgage or loan. So that would be something you talk to your agent or broker about. If you have a mortgage out on a building that is federally backed, and you're in a flood zone, a special flood hazard area, you would have to go get flood insurance. If you're outside any of those high risk zones, you still might want to get flood insurance. Flooding again happens all the time, and the NFIP says that 1/3 of their claims actually come from outside the high risk areas. So if you're looking at a flood hazard map, and we'll talk a little bit about Rhode Island floodplain viewer again. If you're just outside one of those high risk zones, you could tell a small business that it makes a lot of sense to go out and get a policy because you don't know, on any given day where that flood line will actually go, unless you have a really good historical record of what happened at your property. So you can a small business could access the National Flood Insurance Program through their normal insurance agents. There's a floodsmart.gov has a lot of resources on how to get flood insurance, as well as the Rhode Island Floodplain Viewer is an awesome tool. It's better than the FEMA tool. It's supported by Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, and you can search down to the exact street address, and it will give you an give a small business an idea of whether or not they're in a flood zone and what type of flood zone they're in. The website too, floodsmart.gov, has a better explanation of the different flood zones, the A or V zones. All of that information is available on floodsmart.gov. So, tips for small businesses. We would tell them, again, to go straight to their agent and broker to make sure they have the right coverage for their business. They should be reviewing the policy annually at minimum, because another tip down here says communicate year-round as your business changes. So if you add we would suggest if you add something to their business, a small business adds a different a service that requires different equipment, they should be checking in with their insurance agency to see if that's covered. So that's probably within your annual policy needs. But again, review it policy. They should be asking directly of their agent about disaster coverage specifics, about flooding. What do my policies cover for flooding? What do they cover for wind and storms? See if there's any exclusions there. Your broker will tell you, their broker will tell them, or their agent will tell them specifically what's in their property policies. Document and inventory everything. Document. We've discussed that as part of workshop 1 as well. Another tip here, clarify the claims process now, not later. Again, this is about good, clear communication to and from the broker or agent about exactly who they need to call, what types of documentation will be needed, how long will the claim take. I think this is an interesting question though, because I often hear that from small businesses, particularly marinas, when these things happen, the claims process gets extended. It takes a lot longer because there's a lot more disasters. There's a lot more people discussing with their insurance and trying to get assessments and policy coverage. So it takes a little bit longer than probably what they'll tell a small business it's going to take. So that's got to be built into the process of recovery, though, kind of anticipating how long it's going to take for funding from your, for resources from state, from R4R, from insurance company. How long is it going to take that money to flow back to the business? That's all something that's really important to kind of clarify beforehand. In Rhode Island, we have the Department of Business Regulation. They help mediate between insurance companies and businesses when there are large disagreements, major disagreements in policy or coverage. They are the last resort to contact if you need. Your broker, or again, your agent is going to be your first person to contact on coverage and what's covered specifically after disaster. Again, also before disaster, making sure that you have the proper coverages to begin with. So we'll stop there. Hey, Silvana, I saw you're putting in the nice, it's awesome. But you're putting in the links. Really appreciate that. We'll stop there for a moment for questions. Any questions from the audience? Are there any, and maybe in the chat, are there any other small business insurance topics that this group would like covered maybe by Rhode Island Commerce at some point for small businesses? You can drop that in the chat. I do have a poll for it, but if you feel like you want to use the chat to answer those questions, that's great too. And I'll get that information back to Silvana and the Rhode Island Commerce team. Okay. Moving on. Thank you all. So now that we've talked about recovery, that kind of ends the whole, what do we call it? The short-term process of preparing for a disaster, responding immediately to a disaster, and the recovery process. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what preparedness versus resilience means. And they really are two different things. And I think one thing that is really helpful when communicating to small businesses about, first off, just being prepared is one thing, but then thinking about their long-term survival as a business and how they're going to adapt over the long haul to changes in their that changes that might affect their businesses. The big one we talk about here is climate change and how the changing climate, even with small things like how hot it is during the summer, might affect their businesses. And the idea for resilience here is to start thinking in a way that, you know, I'm going to be facing these different climates, these different environments. How is it going to impact my business? And what plans do I need to put in place now and in the future, or as we go into the future, to adjust to those different changes? And that's really what the resilience piece is. So we'll talk about preparedness, talk about resilience. There are 7 key aspects to a resilient business. Talk about implementing resilience. And then we'll talk about some resilience solutions. That's kind of a brainstorm at the end of things that small businesses could do now to start addressing their long-term resilience. So I mentioned this before, preparedness is in the short term. It's event focused. It involves specific actions and plans that would make a business ready for a disruption, and a disruption that they know they could face any day in the near future. Examples of that would be plans for hurricanes, plans for flooding, plans for power outages, plans for thunderstorms, plans for, you name it, any type of business disruption. How would they prepare, address that in the moment, and then immediately after in the recovery process? So that's what your preparedness does for you. It makes those short-term plans, event-focused plans possible. And the goal of those plans are to ensure safety of the customers and employees, but then also the continuity of the business so that it can get up immediately or get back in service immediately and reduce losses to that business. So that's what preparedness is really focused on. Now, in the long term, you have resilience. It's strategic, it's future oriented. It goes beyond immediate readiness and addresses how a business will adapt over time to threats that are ongoing and or repeated challenges. The one I keep going back to in my mind is a coffee shop in the summer that has really nice outdoor seating, but the hotter it gets, right? It might be on the sidewalk. The hotter it gets in the summers, the hotter that sidewalk gets, and the less people want to sit out there and drink coffee, right? So those are the types of things that your strategic and future-oriented resilience plan would start trying to address. Do we put up awnings? Do we create new seatings? Do we move our location to have better outdoor seating? You know, those types of things. So an examples again are here, right? Are relocating businesses, diversifying suppliers. So that's if like your supply chain gets disrupted. Investing in renewable energy, that would help bring energy prices down in the long run, building up a savings, and then integrating climate change into the business planning process. So businesses that plan for growth might add an additional plan into that about how to address changes in the climate and how it affects my business to be part of that long-term business plan. And again, is the goal of this is in that it's different where the goal of preparedness is the short-term, safety-focused continuity after a disaster. Resilience is really about long-term ability to withstand changes in the business over time that will help them maintain their day-to-day competitiveness. Are there questions on that? Cool. So there's not a lot of resources out there that actually specifically talk about business resilience from a climate change perspective. There's a lot of information out there about business resilience from, like meeting global business challenges like the iPhone or AI. There's a lot of resources about how to address those types of business challenges that even a small business might face, but there's not a lot of resources out there about climate. And then a lot of these also, these two at least, these resources, the Small Business Business Resilience Guide, and then this, now I'm going to forget who funded this because I can't see it, but I believe it's a UN document, supported document. It's about climate resilience for small enterprises, micro and small enterprises. They do a really good job addressing the steps that small business can take. In fact, they both discuss different aspects of a resilient business. So a small business, what makes them resilient boils down to 7 things at the moment. The first is preparedness and planning. We've talked about that in the preparedness through recovery sections of these workshops. It's having a clear emergency plans and continuity plans. All of that is part of being a resilient business. Financial strength and flexibility, having savings is really important to long-term success. And then diversified revenue streams. So being able to, when one area of the business might falter, you have another area of the business. So instead of having just outdoor seating, we build in some new indoor seating. We have air conditioning that helps our customer come in and still enjoy the coffee shop. Those types of things. It's a different way of providing revenue. Operational ability, being able to switch those supply lines. Use of redundant. One of the reports actually says the use of digital systems, and I don't think that goes enough. I think it should be really redundant systems. So things like switching to Office 365 to help store documents, but then also having a really good backup system of hard copy things for things that are important if they're lost. Risk awareness and assessment. A resilient business will not just be creating a preparedness plan or a continuity plan and then leaving it on the shelf. They're constantly going to be assessing their risks and being aware of how they'll affect their business. They're regularly identifying and documenting them. Whether they're actually planning for them or not is one thing. It's recognizing that could be a potential threat and documenting it. Again, it's a practice over the long run that'll help build a stronger business. Business culture and strong leadership is essential, both for emergency response and all of that stuff, but making sure that the employees and customers of a business can trust that business owner to do the right thing when it's needed. There's a lot there. So things like clear communication, timely decision making under stress, building a culture of trust and support, including people in solving and empowering people to problem solve. There's a bunch of resources on business leadership out there in the world. We won't go through all of that here, obviously. And then finally, those customer and community relationships, the ties to your community, to chambers of commerce, to your partners, to businesses that are next door. There's one resource at least that said that the first responders aren't really going to be fire or police. Your first responders are going to be the neighbor next door, and they even might be the one calling the police, right? So those are the first responders. Having a good relationship with your customers and community is important there for any small business. And then number 7, continuous learning and innovation. So creating a culture within the business that will review responses to disruptions and figure out ways to adjust and improve. They're investing in new technologies, processes, services that will enhance their business resilience. Things like moving digital, investing in different types of energy sources to help regulate their monthly bill. And embedding sustainability and climate adaptation into their long-term business plan. So the effort to continuously learn and improve. So what could a small business do now? We've talked about this. A simple one is to get in the practice of identifying risks. It might be the hot sidewalk. It might be a noisy neighbor. I don't know. There's a lot of things to document and things to think about that could be potential risks, and making sure that they're being identified on a regular. Preparing a business continuity plan. And I would plug here, see Ready, Set, Roadie workshop number 1, from September 2022. If you haven't, I think everyone here was at that event, but if you know a small business that wasn't, please reach out to Silvana, and she has all those resources, and I believe they're going to be up on the Rhode Island Commerce Small Business Resilience webpage as well. Strengthening their supply chain. Think about different vendors to get different important inputs to their businesses. Prepare an emergency plan similar to the business continuity plan, and as part of the business continuity plan are emergency plans. They could invest in sustainability, things like renewable energy, and evaluate and constantly update, right, their resilience. This is recommendations that come straight from the resilience manual there. I believe it's linked as well within the slide deck. So when you get this slide deck later, you can go and take a look at this resource. So examples of things they could undertake now that would improve their resilience, small businesses' resilience. First off, is join your local chamber of commerce and meet your neighboring businesses. We talked again about community and how important a strong business community is to the overall resilience of small businesses. That's a big thing right there. We talked about how much U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for example, can do for small businesses with their ability to network and bring in resources. Small local chambers of commerce can do that as well. Leverage your local, state, and foundation grants. Small businesses should be identifying multiple suppliers. We've already said that. Making sure that systems can support remote working options. That's something that could be implemented now, if that's possible, obviously, for the business. Start saving money in an emergency fund. They could start planning for long-term building and business upgrades that include mitigating so as part of their upgrades to their regular business, they start thinking about mitigating on their own now the most likely hazards to their business. And then finally, participate in the local planning processes and provide input and advocate input to those planning processes, and then also advocate for resilient infrastructure. Again, community resilience is a big piece of this, and municipalities play a huge role in supporting a business like a Main Street's business ability to be resilient. Are there any questions? Time is here. Okay, so just plugging some resources here that might be of interest to you. This is the Rhode Island Commerce Small Business Resilience website, which Silvana, is it? I know it's live, right? It is live now.
It will be by the end of this week.
Cool. So this will be a one-stop shop for small businesses and accessing different tools and resources throughout the state of Rhode Island and beyond. I know that we'll have these presentations up there, and I know there's already a lot about energy programs and I believe all the REMA, Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency stuff is up there as well. There's a bunch of stuff up on there. So that's going to be available very shortly and is a great resource to small businesses. In addition to that, Climate Change Rhode Island did I think these are from 2019 is from what I could find. If anyone has a better date on when these were built. These are printable guides for small businesses in Rhode Island. I should have done a screenshot of just the inside of the pamphlet. There's a lot of checklists in there. There's policies. There's steps towards resilience, those types of things. And they break it down by type of business, which is really helpful too. So, for example, someone that is lodging and accommodations, hotel, would get a really good overview of what they are, what is important to their specific business. Excuse me. Okay. Why won't you go forward? There we go. Providence Emergency Management Agency. I think I did. I know I did. I don't think I did. I did call this out in workshop 1 as well. These are resources built by the Providence Emergency Management Agency. They are branded and stuff for Providence businesses or Providence, the city, but it is all valuable information for any small business anywhere. This is a printout of the flooding section, and they're a really good resource to have. Another great thing about this is they're available in the top 6 languages spoken in Providence. That is a great resource for a lot of small business owners. So if you know there's language diversity in your area, this is a really good tool that would be useful to communicate towards small businesses. Moving on to the last section where we talk about some green energy programs and then opportunities for small businesses to upgrade their properties. We mostly talk about energy programs in this section, so I'll dive right in. Rhode Island Energy, again, we're not moving forward, stand by. Rhode Island Energy so we'll talk about Rhode Island Energy. We'll talk about the Rhode Island Commerce Renewable Energy Fund, talk about community solar programs. We'll look specifically at the Pawtucket grant for business improvement. And then finally, we'll close out with the Rhode Island Commerce Energy Efficiency Grant Program, which will be coming available in the new year. But these are all resources for small businesses. So the first is, if you're not familiar with it here, it's really important. So Rhode Island Energy provides basically a no-cost energy assessment. It is a no-cost energy assessment program for small businesses. It is supported by Rise Engineering, and I have a little bit about them as well. The assessment is free, and then there's really good incentives on installing energy efficient equipment, upgrades to your building, envelope upgrades, lighting, HVAC controls, all sorts of stuff that would make a business more efficient. And more efficient means less money spent on energy, which means more money saved for their emergency fund. So really good way to maintain competitiveness is to bring down energy costs. Again, the eligibility requirements are pretty easy to meet here. I'm pretty sure must be an active Rhode Island Energy customer. I believe pretty much everyone in the state of Rhode Island is a Rhode Island Energy customer because they distribute. They pay. You have to pay on your bill have to pay the system's benefit charge, which is a fee added on top of your bill. And then you have some average annual usages of less than 1.5 million kilowatt hours and 40,000 therms or less. So that's kind of just that would qualify as the small portion of that small business. Again, I mentioned that this is a program that is supported by and partnered, that Rhode Island Energy partnered with Rise Engineering to operate. So you can contact Rise directly. That link will get any small business right to Rise. And there's a portal on there where they can sign up immediately for a energy assessment. So that's the first step, is understanding the energy consumption of the building, and then they'll Rise itself goes in and offers some savings, does some analysis like payback period and those types of things. The graphic on your right gives an example of what types of efficiency can be had. Specifically for things like lighting and heating. Heating can go from something like 62% efficiency in your heating and lighting all the way to 98% efficiency in heating and lighting. So lots of savings there. Things like LED lighting upgrades, energy management systems, refrigeration controls, demand control, ventilation, programmable thermostats, all of this stuff is available for small businesses to, and not only are they able for the small businesses to access, they are actually available for incentive programs as well. That again, Rise Engineering will cover right through the process. And then the last aspect of this is that if you do go through this process, if a small business does go through this process, they have access to on-bill financing. So what that means is any upgrades and the costs responsible by the business, the fees responsible by the business, will be added directly onto a bill at a spread out interval, so a payback period. Usually low I'm not sure if there's interest rates. That's something I don't know about. So that's something we could check on. But again, long term. I'm seeing Silvana. Awesome. Thanks, Silvana. See you in the chat. Another program that the Rhode Island is available to small businesses in Rhode Island and businesses in general is the Rhode Island Commerce's Renewable Energy Fund. This fund provides grants for renewable energy projects from small scale to commercial scale. Just exactly what a small business would be eligible for as a small business goes through the process, they can figure out what they're eligible for. There's some eligibility requirements, there's some size requirements, but the REF can help you figure that out. But again, this is a way for a business to invest in a renewable energy project and in the end save their business money. You can find out more information at the Renewable Energy Fund website. It's under the Commerce RI banner /Renewable Energy Fund. So more information there. Community solar is a great opportunity for small businesses and a way for them to reduce their uh, their rates specifically for electricity. The purpose of community solar is to expand the benefits of renewable energy to a larger group of people that might not have the ability to install solar on their property. So it's essentially a shared ownership um, of of a solar project that is external to the location. So somewhere out in another part, on top of a big roof, um, on top of a warehouse, in a field, those types of things. OER maintains a community solar marketplace. So the Office of Energy Resources in Rhode Island maintains a community solar marketplace that is active, and there are currently posted on that marketplace fun sites that small businesses can buy into. And what happens there is once they've been assigned a site, the small business will earn credits directly on their monthly electric bills. So you'll see the energy charge and then a back charge for or a reduction of credit for the amount that the solar panel, the share of the solar installation that they're part of has provided to them. And it does fluctuate. So again, a reminder, we talked about the City of Pawtucket's grant opportunity here for business improvements. What's great about this program is it's not just for energy efficiency or things like that, or just for flood mitigation. It's for rehabilitation of the property itself. So helping improvements of the facade, leasehold improvements, again, interior remodeling. The program is meant to, what's great, the program will provide grants to help improve the property itself, make it more competitive. So it's a really great program run through the city of Pawtucket. And it opened up in August 5th, and it's still open today. They have $2.3 million available, and they're offering grants up to $100,000 for these business improvements. The business must contribute 10% match, though. Again, there are the program is linked within this document, so you'll be able to click right on it and go right to that City of Pawtucket Business Improvement Program. And then finally, on the finally on the programs available to small businesses is an upcoming energy efficiency grant program that is sponsored by Rhode Island Commerce as well as OER, not OER, EC4, Rhode Island Energy, and Rise Engineering. This is going to be a partnership. And that program will be available in February of 2026. So stay tuned from Silvana on on updates for that program. So final thoughts when you're out there in the world and you're talking to a small business owner, make sure they are making a plan. Make sure they are looking at preparedness for specific events that face them in the short term. Recommend that they make a plan for long-term resilience of their business and things that might affect their competitiveness or their revenue streams, including impacts of climate change on their business. Make sure that they're checking their insurance. Their agent is their insurance agent or broker is their best tool to figure out exactly what they need for their coverages at their business. And then they should always be visiting REMA, Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency's websites, as well as Rhode Island Commerce's new resilience webpage for more information and for more resources. Again, the REMA site has a lot of information on preparedness, business disaster supply kits, recovery, the SBA programs, and then what to do when you're recovering as well from a disaster. Rhode Island Commerce's website will have a lot of information on that are specifically for small businesses. And that's kind of how you would navigate those two different sites. Savannah, is there anything else you want to add there?
No, you covered plenty. Thank you, Eric.
Awesome.